Superman 2, or Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, as I'm going to address it today, is the second in my Superman series of Superman reviews, and it is the follow-up to Superman the movie, which came out in 1978. This one came out in 1980, and then the Richard Donner cut, which I'm going to be talking about today, sorta kinda came out in 2006. It's hard to talk about this movie without talking about the two different versions of the movie, because rest assured, when you watch both versions, it does feel like it's directed by two completely different people. I'm primarily going to be focusing on the Richard Donner cut today, but I will take time to address some of the differences between the two cuts. I did watch both of them to prepare for this review. Which means, yes, eventually in this review, I will address Superman throwing his S at one of the big Kryptonians, and yeah, I'll address that. I mean, seriously, what was that? What the hell was that? It's like, that was a convenience. He basically threw a candy wrapper at the dude, and the dude kind of like, I'm perfectly fine. Oh, okay, sure. Do you guys remember that scene in Superman the movie, the scene at the very beginning of the movie that featured Jor-El and the Council of Krypton lecturing and scolding these evil-ass Kryptonians? Evil-ass Kryptonians were led by General Zod, played by the enigmatic Terrence Stamp, and Terrence Stamp basically was like, yeah, you'll all suffer, and you will kneel before me, Jor-El, you and your heir! And then he got banished to the Phantom Zone. The Phantom Zone is basically a transparent diamond that just flips through space for no reason whatsoever, and all three of them are trapped in there, and due to some unfortunate circumstances that involve Superman from the first movie throwing a missile into space, basically they fall in a hole, they get separated from the Phantom Zone, they discover they have powers, and then eventually they find themselves on Earth, where they try to rule everything, and Terrence Stamp is on his whole kneel before Zod thing pretty much the entire movie. While all this is going on, you have a really personal story going on with Clark Kent. Clark Kent has decided that he wants to be with Lois, and he can't be Clark Kent and Superman and be with Lois, so he decides he's gonna give the whole thing up? Yeah, the big overarching thing is the conflict with the Kryptonians and Superman having to deal with these General Zod and his followers, but the real heart of Superman 2 is a love story. It's about Superman falling in love with Lois, and then he's just kind of like, once you've had pussy, you can't go back, so I just don't want these powers anymore. In that sense, the Richard Donner cut and the Richard Lester cut definitely differ in terms of tone, because the Richard Lester cut deals with everything in kind of a more campy, comedic way, and the Richard Donner cut really kind of focuses on the emotion and the heart behind a character like Superman. I'm one of those rare individuals that actually prefers this cut over the original Superman the movie, because I feel like Richard Donner tried to make the story a little bit more grounded and actually focus on Superman being a god among human beings. And these movies, he's basically an invincible god. He's a big, gentle giant, but he wants to be human. He wants to come down to our level. And what better way to come down to our level than to give everything up for some pussy? I mean, who hasn't done that? That's the epitome of human level right there. So he goes to his father and he's basically like, yeah, father, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be with her. And if it comes down to being Superman or being with her, I choose her. I choose her, you know? Ash Ketchum, I choose you, I choose her. That's how this works. Jor-El is basically pleading with the dude for 5 minutes. He's like, yeah, this is a bad idea, man. Once you do this, you can't go back. Are you sure you've thought this through? To which Clark responds with, hey, father, I mean, you haven't been inside that thing like I have. I mean, Jesus, I'm the Man of Steel. She can melt steel with that pussy. Seriously. No, seriously, Dad, have you ever put a Hot Pocket in the microwave for a little bit too long, and then at the end, once you open the door, there's like guts and cheese hanging out the side of it? Yeah, picture that shit. I want that. If you were here, you'd want it too. One of the best scenes in the entire movie is the scene where Clark, now a regular human, goes to a bar and he gets his ass kicked by this douchebag. This douchebag is being a dick, he's hitting on Lois, and Clark is kind of like, hey, well, can we take this outside? First of all, the guy sucker punches him in the back of the neck. That was just, that's dick move 101. You don't hit a man with his back is turned. Clark tries to step up to him and he ultimately gets his ass kicked, and it's really heartbreaking seeing Christopher Reeve covered in glass and blood and just sitting there realizing like, damn, I'm not Superman anymore, and I don't know how to be a regular person, and I realized that Superman isn't just who I want to be, it's who I need to be. I'm gonna talk about Terrence Stamp for a second. Terrence Stamp is not really written in a very complex or ingenious type of way. I mean, he's pretty much just, I'm evil, I want to lord over everything, I want to control everything because I am Zod and I should control everything. So, kneel before Zod! That's basically his whole shtick, and then it becomes, after he finds out that Superman is the son of Jor-El, it's kind of, oh, well, we should kill that douchebag. Yeah, let's kill him, because I said I would. But in this case, it's not really about how the villain is written, it's really more about the execution and the performance. Terrence Stamp is so corny and cheesy and beautifully over the top in this movie, you just can't help but look back at it and go, man, That was kind of iconic. I have half a mind for the rest of this review to just say kneel before Zod at really random moments throughout the review that have nothing to do with Terrence Stamp. Like I could be talking about Lois or Perry or somebody else and I just feel like I'll randomly burst out into kneel before Zod, and I feel like that's going to be a thing. Apparently there was big beef between Richard Donner and the producers of the first movie and the producers of this movie, and Richard Donner was kind of like, hey, you guys need to pay Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando wanted some money. The producers were like, nah, we'd rather cut him out. We don't want him in the movie. Richard Donner was like, I want to make the movie that I want to make. You guys get off my fucking back. And that basically led to a splitting of the ways, so to speak. Well, again, like I said, Richard Lester's version is much more campy. It's much more silly. Richard Donner's version is much more emotional, much more grounded, a little bit darker. One example of this is during the big climatic fight scene with the Kryptonians. I mean, there's a lot of collateral damage, by the way, going on in this fight. I find it funny that nobody bitched about it back then, but apparently it's a big deal today. But either way, Superman is fighting these Kryptonians and stuff is happening and things are flying all over the place and there's cars getting destroyed and there's buildings getting thrown into and the whole shebang pretty much. In the Richard Lester version, they play certain things for comedy, like they have a man's toupee fly off because it's supposed to be haha funny. They have like an ice cream cone end up somewhere where it's not supposed to end up. And none of that shit in the Richard Donner version. The Richard Donner version, he wants you to know that shit is happening, shit is real, people are in danger, buildings are falling. And also, apparently, Gene Hackman, who plays Lex Luthor, didn't want to be in Richard Lester's version of Superman 2. He wanted to be in the Donner version. So as a result, you can definitely see, and if you do some research, you can definitely see that there is more Lex Luthor in the Richard Donner version. He has more scenes. They also edited around it in the Richard Lester version, like the wide shots of him and stuff. They had to like get actors who looked like him and they had to like do a whole bunch of special stuff. But the point is, there's more Marlon Brando and there's more Lex Luthor in the Richard Donner version. Probably why I like it so much. The usual complaints are still there. Is the movie somewhat dated? Yeah, kinda. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other stuff you could complain about in this movie, like the fact that Superman straight up abandons the people of Metropolis. I'm not even talking about when he leaves humanity to go be with Lois. I mean, that's, okay, that's kind of like Shaft losing his balls. That's like Ludacris with losing his hair. I mean, it happens. You get it. Talking about the fact that in the middle of the fight, after Superman shrugs off an attack from a truck, he looks around and then he just flies away, and I'm just kind of like, holy shit, Superman just left all the people there. Like, what if Zod and his followers had decided to, like, kill a whole bunch of people and keep destroying the city? What was Superman doing? It just kind of flew away to his fortress. I know, in the grand scheme of things, it might not seem like that big a deal, but it's just kind of a weird moment. You have weird moments like that you could bitch and complain about. We obviously have the S-throwing scene, which is really stupid. It also gets really dumb at the end after Superman defeats Zod and his people by doing the switcheroo on the whole red solar sun take my powers thing in the Fortress of Solitude. In the Richard Lester version, Superman makes Lois lose her memory by kissing her. It's almost like his lips turned into the neuralizer from Men in Black, and he kissed her memories away because he didn't want her to remember shit. Out of all the stupid ass Superman powers that we've seen over the years, come on, you know that shit was really dumb. Granted, Superman flying around the world again and reversing time is still stupid as it was in Superman the movie, but you can tolerate that. I feel like I can tolerate that a lot more than I can tolerate Superman basically using the neuralizer on his lips and making Lois forget everything by smooching her. Things about the Richard Donner cut and about the Richard Lester cut that it kind of makes you wish that you had more of that Superman the movie feel, like John Williams and his score. It's not the same. I mean, it's still there because somebody else is using his theme. It just doesn't feel the same as it felt in Superman the movie. You feel like the musical score was, I don't know, you felt the heart more of it in the first movie. Here you can just kind of tell that somebody's just kind of trying to imitate his theme. In the end, it was kind of refreshing to see a Richard Donner cut, to see it focus more on the emotional side of Superman. Christopher Reeve is once again brilliant as Superman, as he always is. Kneel before Zod! Sorry. And there are some fun elements to Richard Lester's version, but I do prefer the more serious version of the Richard Donner cut. It just kind of feels like the more complete, well-rounded movie to me. And this movie is gonna get the same exact rating that Superman the movie got. It's gonna get Superman Prime because it fucking deserves it. By the way, what did you guys think about Superman at the end of the movie giving that bully in the diner a lesson? You know, the guy that kicked his ass? I wonder what you guys think about that. Let me know down below. And subscribe to the Superfan Show, and as always, if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.